Okay, good evening, everybody. I am going to call to order this regular board meeting of the Perrysburg Board of Education on Monday, May 15th, 2023. Mr. Dreyer, roll call, please.
Mrs. Eubank.
Here.
Dr. Reffert.
Here.
Mr. Pullman.
Here.
Ms. Larimer.
Here.
Mr. Bennington.
Here. I ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, always great to see such a strong turnout. These are the fun meetings this late in the school year. So we're going to start with our safety briefing. Perrysburg Schools welcomes you to the Commodore Building, and we thank you for attending tonight's Board of Education meeting. We care about the safety of our students, staff, families, and guests. Please note that there are exits on both the east and west sides of the cafeteria. In case of an emergency, an AED is located just outside the cafeteria doors. You are located at 140 East Indiana Avenue. Thank you for joining us tonight and supporting Perrysburg Schools. Okay. You have the agenda in front of you. I would like a motion to adopt the proposed agenda.
So moved.
Ms. Larimer
Second.
and Dr. Reffert. Roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer.
Yes.
Dr. Reffert.
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank.
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes, motion carries. Okay, as we typically do this time of year, we've got a lot of recognition. So, Mr. Hassler, I will turn it over to you to guide us through that.
All right, well, thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody coming out today, and certainly it's an exciting time of year. So we don't have an official countdown clock behind us, but I know that there are many in the audience that could give us the exact date and time when school is going to be out. So, but we wanted to highlight some very important things that have happened here in the last few months, and first is a recognition of one of our junior high students, Isaiah Lake. So
Over there, Isaiah. Oh, look how red it is.
All right, well, today we get to celebrate the accomplishments of our State Science Day qualifier, Isaiah Lake. He developed a bit of technology to desalinate water, so he can take salt water and turn that into fresh drinking water using things he had around the house. He was hoping that he'd be able to use this technology or to share this technology with people who live in places where they have plenty of salt water but not a lot of fresh water, such as California or other places like the Middle East. In order to get to State Science Day, he had to earn a superior rating at our local science fair and then another superior rating at the district science fair at the University of Toledo. The State Science Fair is virtual again this year, unfortunately, so we're still waiting on those results, but we'll let you know as soon as we have them. Congratulations, Isaiah.
Well, that's a great accomplishment, Isaiah. On behalf of the board, congratulations again.
Next, going from being recognized at the state level for such an accomplishment, congratulations, to some of our high school students that are being recognized. Ms. Bird, if you wouldn't mind coming up and telling us about some of your DECA International qualifiers.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. So we're all in the orange. I will call them up here real quick. We have Allison, Noah, Adriana, Jack, Devin, Mira, Katie, Lux, Olivia, Lauren, Jacob, and Daniel. I was waiting for you last for a reason. So these kiddos and 2 others all qualified for international competition this year. They all placed in the top 5 or higher in the state of Ohio, which then qualifies them for international competition, which is wonderful. It is our second biggest group to qualify. However, this year, these guys have stood out among everyone. We have Jack, who received a top score in his international role play. And what that means is there's usually 200 or so kids per category. And when they compete, they get a score. And his was one of the highest of 200 plus, 200 to 230, somewhere around there. We also had Lauren, who received the same thing, a high score on her role play. So these were around 95s, 96s out of 100. And then for the first time ever in PHS DECA history, we got DECA glass this year. And as you can see, Mr. Daniel Kavanaugh has placed second internationally.
Wow.
Yes, wow is right. It is not an easy thing to do. Daniel, what was your test score? 92? We looked, and then like a 96 or a 97 on his role play. And that is absolutely phenomenal. So everyone was very proud of Daniel, and I'm very proud of this group. Again, once again, I always have amazing PHS kids, and they've done well, and now we have raised the bar once more, so we will see what happens. So thank you. Congratulations.
I'll ask Becky to come back. So that she...
Okay. Second international. Holy cow.
in human resources management.
Wow.
That's awesome. And we have a junior high kid changing water. I mean, it's amazing.
I wish he'd done that. I judged that 2 years in a row. I would have loved to have had that thing.
So Miss Bird, before you leave, maybe you could just share a little bit about just give some folks, because maybe.
I am so sorry. So DECA is an organization that these guys, they're actually in my class. They're in my marketing class. And so some of them are seniors. I have 4 seniors who went, and the rest of them are juniors. And so I have them for 2 years. That's the idea, is that I have them for 2 years. And they learn about anything from how a business is structured, the management, all of the procurement of a business, a little tiny bit of finance, but that's actually what Daniel specialized in and learned a lot on his own. I cannot take credit for that. He studied a lot. And then from product development to the actual marketing of everything. And so they receive college credit. It is a CCP course. And depending on how many classes they take with me, they can earn anywhere from 6 to 18 college credit. And so they have to be in class with me in order to be a part of DECA. And then DECA is the extra stuff, the out of the classroom stuff, the opportunities that they get for leadership and entrepreneurship. Like, our goal is to build young leaders, putting them into finance, marketing, business, entrepreneurship, those kind of things.
Great.
And next year we have our biggest, I have 150 kids next year.
Wow.
Yeah, congratulations again. Look forward to seeing most of you back here next year.
Next, we do have, and we'll ask our folks to come up, but we are introducing our winter sports state qualifiers, which is our gymnastics team, and we're very fortunate that they were able to be here this month, and we had so many last month. This way, you can get a little bit of a spotlight, which is well deserved. So, so thank you very much, Danielle.
Thank you. My name is Coach Danielle Tulojeski. This is Coach Michael Zwayer. She lost her voice, so I'm presenting on our behalfs. So thank you to the board for this opportunity for recognition this evening. We could not make it last month, and so we're very happy to be here this month. A little bit about our gymnastics program. We had a phenomenal season. We had 37 wins and 1 loss. Barely. We were NLL champions for the 8th consecutive year in a row and district champions for the 6th consecutive year in a row, which advanced us to the state meet this year. We placed 10th at the state meet, and while we had a JV team this year throughout most of our season, we also had everybody compete at the state meet for us, which was great. So our team members include, and you guys can join me up here, seniors, Kara Littner, Carly Milligan, Emma Palmer, and Reagan Ruley. Yeah, head that way. We had one junior this year who is doubling down in track, so she's still at the track right now. That was Ava Kincaid. And we had sophomores Lauren Klein, Kenna Heyer, Valerie Ward, and Casey Wiseman. Sydney Wolfinger could not be here with us due to a prior commitment. And we had freshmen Cameron Butler, who could not be here, McKenna Conley, and Janie Snyder, and Abby Lee. And in addition to qualifying for the state tournament as a team, we did also have 2 individual qualifiers. So that was Emma Palmer. Where are you, Emma? Hi. And then Ava Kincaid, who's at track. So congratulations, ladies, on a great season.
Well, again, to the seniors, congratulations and good luck in your future endeavors. To the rest of you guys, is it too early to use the word dynasty? Am I allowed to say that? Does that put a... all right, let's use the word dynasty. Look forward to seeing you guys here next year. Congratulations again.
Next on the agenda is our Shining Star Awards. So we're very grateful for the Griffune Agency, Fritz Griffune, who over the years has sponsored this award, and a gift card that goes with it to an outstanding staff member who has been nominated by others in the district. And unfortunately, I know Fritz is very busy and can't be here this evening, but he wanted me to pass along, his recognition, or acknowledgement of this. So with this, I'll turn it over to 2 of our nominees, or nominators, from Perrysburg Junior High.
So are we supposed to embarrass Scott, or?
Sure, okay.
Just a little.
A little bit of both.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely, it's a roast.
There he is. So we're going to read what the nominations that were submitted. But before I read mine, I would just like to say that I had Scott as a student when I taught at the high school. I just turned 21 yesterday. But to say that I am proud as one of his teachers and now to be able to call him my boss is... It's beyond words. So what I put is, Scott is always looking for ways to help students and staff become better. His weekly updates to the staff always include thought-provoking articles or videos to help you become a better person. Scott is one of the most calmest people I know. Thinks through situations before reacting and always does the right thing, even when nobody is looking. I know that Scott will be there for me, the students, and other staff members to help us through situations, provide perspective and guidance. Scott bleeds black and gold and shows the jacket pride like no other. Scott is a role model, and I am blessed to call him our principal.
There were so many other staff people that had nominated Scott, but were not able to be here due to family commitments. So I tried to highlight just a few of the most important things that they had to say that were different in each one of the nominations. This one's from Tiffany Townsend, a junior high math teacher. She says, Scott has been an incredible leader in his new role as our head principal. I appreciate his goal of always wanting us to be just a little bit better. I appreciate his focus on us as people, not just teachers. He encourages us to put our family first. He's created an environment where we as a staff support each other and learn from each other. From Corinne Roach, an 8th grade science teacher, in order for students to achieve their greatest potential, you need to have a staff with an excellent leader to inspire that growth. Scott Bucher is that leader. In my 7 years at PJHS, I've had the pleasure of working with Scott Bucher as an intervention specialist, the assistant principal, and now the principal of our building. In every role, Scott shines. Scott is an experienced, kind leader, excellent communicator, and dedicated member of the Perrysburg Schools community. He deserves to be recognized for his outstanding efforts in his number of roles throughout the district. From Kathleen Schneer, an orchestra teacher at the junior high, Scott Bucher is the epitome of a shining star at Perrysburg Schools. He is kind, compassionate, fun, and leads with integrity. We are truly blessed to have a leader like him. From Betsy Cranston, also in orchestra at the junior high, Scott Bucher has always been a positive administrative presence in the junior high. Since administrators don't always have the same one-on-one contact with large groups of students that teachers do, Scott makes it a priority to ensure his teachers and staff members have the physical and mental emotional support we need as we work with students each day. He truly cares about his staff and makes decisions that help us do our jobs the best for students. Ashley Mundrick is an 8th grade math teacher. She says Scott does not hesitate to tell us that he appreciates us and often starts or ends his emails, meetings, and conversations with a thank you for all you give. As an educator, there is nothing better than to hear that and know that you are appreciated and heard. Overall, Scott is a great leader who takes the time to get to know his staff and students and makes it clear that he cares about us and that he supports us. I started my nomination with Yippee Skippy. If you know, you know. There are several things that I appreciate about working with Scott. He's a dynamic leader who strives to bring out the best in everyone under his leadership. Scott says thank you in so many ways. He truly notices and appreciates his staff. The ending to his weekly email is always special. You all never cease to impress me. Have a great Friday. Have fun with your kids, and if I don't see you, take advantage of the weekend with those that you love. And my personal favorite, thank you for all you give. In terms of student achievement, I believe when you have good leadership, all people thrive. Teachers are encouraged to take risks and try something new. New strategies lead to innovative thinking and collaboration. When the work environment values these things, these new strategies ultimately affect student achievement. Influential leaders are all about empowering others. Scott is one of those leaders. And finally, one of the best things about Scott Bucher is his way of interacting with kids. At the junior high level, kids are hormonal, they do stupid things, they're mean to each other, and so on. And Scott understands that this age of development and actually has a way of coaching kids into better versions of themselves. He asks them, what kind of person do you want to be? The discipline is there. Kids know when they've messed up, but they will always know their mistakes do not define them, and they will always be given another chance to make a different choice next time. Offering kids grace is one of the best things we can do to help them learn and grow and develop into productive, compassionate human beings. It feels good to nominate such a wonderful educator and leader in our district for the Shining Star Award. No one deserves it more. Scott Bucher.
Well, that is well-deserved, Mr. Bucher. On behalf of the board, congratulations, and what great, kind things to be said about you. The board, we hear all of that, and equally impressive as it looks like you brought quite the cheering squad to come and watch this day, too. So well done, Scott. Thank you.
And I think at the final presentation, and then we'll take a quick break because I know folks need to head home and study for exams and other things. But I think the continuation of this conversation of excellence with our students, from getting an award individually or collectively as a team, to having outstanding staff members like we do as a building leader was just shared. But we're also very fortunate to have many great teachers, and Ms. Kelly Johnson from the high school will be here to talk about Ms. Tara Zeckman, one of our math teachers who is nominated and has received a significant accolade. And I had the opportunity to be with Mrs. Zeckman just the other day, where our valedictorian and salutatorian were able to bring one of their most influential teachers, and of course she was at the table. So we're very excited to hear about this nomination.
Thank you so much for leading us off. The Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching are the nation's highest honors for mathematics and science teachers. The program recognizes teachers for their contributions to instruction and learning, as well as their ability to help students make progress in mathematics and science. Awardees serve as role models for their colleagues, inspiration for their communities, and leaders for the improvement of mathematics and science education. 4 Ohio math teachers were selected as state finalists. A national committee will select one Ohio math teacher to receive a paid trip to Washington, D.C., a proclamation from the President of the United States, and a $10,000 award. One of those 4 finalists is our very own Tara Zeckman. I'm not done yet. Hold on. We got to brag about her for a minute. Tara earned her bachelor's degree in secondary education from Notre Dame University and her master's degree in education from the University of Toledo. In 2005, Tara joined Perrysburg High School as a math teacher. Currently, she is the math department head, student council advisor, and teaches AP Calculus and Honors Trig/Pre-Calculus. She has increased enrollment in AP Calculus by 77% in 2 years, with students scoring an average of 4.57 out of 5 on the most recent AP Calculus test, with 66 students testing. Tara holds the Master Teacher designation, Perrysburg Schools Foundation Teacher of the Year, and most notably has been awarded the most influential teacher by a valedictorian or salutatorian for countless years in a row. I could go on and on bragging about Tara because her reach is far and wide. She is dedicated, student-focused, passionate, and we are tremendously lucky that she has decided to share her talents with Perrysburg High School. Congratulations.
Can you walk?
That's okay. Let them, they're already going, so that's fine. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
So our next agenda item will be our first opportunity for public participation. This public participation opportunity will be for specific board agenda items only. There will be a second opportunity for public participation on non-board agenda items at the end of the meeting. We do ask that you sign up for either one of those sessions now, And before we get to that, we will let those who do not want to stick around for the rest of the meeting get on with their evening. Congratulations to all again. Thank you. We are on break.
Are you taking a break?
Yeah.
Okay, so I need to know. I want to know what he did.
Hey, Ray. Oh, if you need to talk to somebody, go ahead.
We'll regroup here after our, sorry about that, 10-minute break. Next item on the agenda are the superintendent reports. Mr. Hasser, once you are, oh, I'm sorry, public participation. No one has signed up for either session. So next item is our superintendent's report.
Here it is.
All right, thank you. Just a few things we wanted to review. As you know, we're going to be this Sunday, May 21st at 2 p.m. at the Huntington Center in Toledo. We're going to be celebrating Perrysburg High School's 158th commencement ceremony. So that's pretty exceptional. And I know that Mr. Cookson and the students there are working very hard to provide a memorable experience for the students and staff and families that'll be attending for that special day. So just to kind of brag a little bit about the class, this graduating class has accepted has been offered over $18 million in scholarships. It wasn't all that long ago when we celebrated $7 million, and to see that number continue to increase year over year is exceptional. Moments ago, you heard about the AP results with Mrs. Ekman. We haven't received the 2023 results. We're very excited, but we just wanted to showcase where we've been going back to 2018. And AP is advanced placement. Those are courses that are taught to students who, at the end of the course, can take a national test, and depending on their scores from 1 to 5, can receive college credit for that test and the class that they took. We have 276 students that have taken an AP test. Of those 276, some of them take multiple AP courses, and we have 512 tests that were administered for those 276 students. 83% are achieving a 3 or above, which is typically the threshold of where colleges give credit. So that's a huge benefit to families who are sending kids to college and getting credit for, classes that the students start at a much higher level and are able to do that. This is 2022-2023 National Northwest Ohio National Merit Scholarship Program semifinalists. You can see their Perrysburg in the gold over those 2 years continues to lead. Be a leader in Northwest Ohio. So you can see combined where we stand versus many of the other public and private schools. Certainly hats off to Maumee Valley that just has eclipsed us by one over those 2 years. But when you look at some of the schools that are there, including many of the private schools, you could add them all together, and they do not have the kind of success that we've had. Last month, we were announced, Bob Heacock, the 1962 graduate of Perrysburg High School, donated $500,000 to the school's foundation. And this really life-changing donation is going to go towards a graduating senior for someone that normally would not be available to attend school because of a financial barrier. And this will eliminate that for tuition, room and board, books, supplies, travel, and other types of support needed. So we're very fortunate, and his mother was a teacher here in Perrysburg, and he and his sister Dorothy were very much in agreement that they wanted something to represent the family and the value of education. Bob is living out in California, but has never forgotten his Perrysburg roots, so we're grateful for that. We also just want to point out with the expenditures for the Ohio Department of Education CUP report, tallies what every district spends in the state of Ohio, all 609 school districts, and they come up with an average, and then they calculate based on all the reports and financial data that we're required to share with ODE that comes from Randy's office. They slice it up and put it together. In any way, we are this year $1,700 below the state average. So in Ohio, the cost to educate a public school student, we're doing it at $1,700 below that. So we're very excited. We'll be talking again very quickly about very soon about the community facilities recommendations, continuing that work. And we're excited about the progress that has been made with that. I really enjoy this picture because it shows, the community members here in this room in tables working very closely, discussing and coming up with recommendations. And next month we'll be working on the strategic planning, the community input that'll be presented there. So we have two major pieces of direction that the board has charged us with kind of finding out those community voices, and we're very grateful that we have the kind of community that steps up. So we're going to have another packed boardroom next month, where we're going to be recognizing those that participated on the strategic plan. They'll be making their presentation. And also we're bringing the facilities group back and saying thank you for them, something that we haven't done, but we're getting near to decision time, and we want to not lose sight of that. We've been planning for next school year, and taking a look at Mr. Christie's leadership, and under his direction, we've been very actively recruiting and filling positions. Just when you think that we have a kind of a handle on our staffing, we'll get another resignation or retirement or a change. And he's done a remarkable job being the first year in this role of HR and anticipating and working with all the different departments. It's a tireless job, and I know if anyone on the board here can relate to that, certainly it's Dr. Reffert and her line of work, very similar. But we're still looking for some teachers, bus drivers, crossing guards, aides, administrators, and many, many more positions. And I know Don has been working on a new way to attract candidates, and you can see here this flyer that was put together with Don and Rachel Zicker, where we're getting into beginning to do job fairs and QR codes that we're sending out so people can have immediate access. So we're really grateful for really taking a fresh look at finding people where they are and kind of departing from some of the traditional ways we do that. At this point, I'll invite Brooke Price to come up to talk a little bit about the Hall Prairie Intermediate School reunification drill. I'll ask her to talk briefly, but I wanted her to come up mainly so that we could recognize her and the effort that she led in conjunction with Mr. Best and the whole HPI staff. So this was kind of an area of her specialty with safety and security in the district. She's kind of that safety and security czar. And we're very grateful that she is looking at not only just checking the box to do drills, but asking the question, what do we need to do after? And so that led us really to some things. So we'll go more in depth, but first, Brooke, just thank you for your leadership and all that you've done to keep this moving along and the forefronts and taking on something, frankly, that districts don't do because it's hard work. So thank you for that. And if you'd like to add a few words, sure, help yourself.
Well, thanks, Tom. So first, thank you to HPI families. I know it was a big ask for people to participate, and we had quite a few people participate. And again, we can do a presentation with a little more of the granular details for the board, maybe at a later time. But really, this has started with a vulnerability assessment paid through safety grant funds a couple years ago. And we developed several action items, and one of them was really to plan for reunification. In a district our size, with the number of students we have and the way our buildings are located, when you really start to think about how would we reconnect students and their families in a crisis, there's a lot of moving parts to it. And so we use methods from the I Love You Guys Foundation, and that link is available in an email that went out to all families. We've been planning this for quite a while. We really started to plan for this actual drill in December, and we're able to bring it to fruition with the parents' help last week. But the why really is to make sure there's a safe process to reunify students and families in a crisis, because likely buildings would be on lockdown. There's a lot of high emotions going, and we really need to make sure we're getting the student with the adult that they're supposed to be released to. Mr. Best pulled some preliminary data. It was actually a staff meeting this afternoon at 3. We debriefed with the HPI staff. They had filled out a survey. We had some of the parent survey results as well. I plan to share them with Safety Committee and District Safety Task Force tomorrow night. And the police department was there, and they were able to show us some of the drone footage. They had drones out looking at traffic patterns. So there's certainly some adjustments that we'll make, but on average, we released 4 students a minute during that drill. There's also, I think, of interest for people to understand just the whole custodial piece. 26% of the building has a custodial flag. So there's quite a lot of detail that needs to go into really making sure this is done safely. So more to come, but we are continuing to gather feedback. The survey's out there. Parents are continuing to fill that out. Police department made some adjustments with some of the traffic patterns based on their drone footage that they shared today. So we are going to get better, but certainly it was by all accounts, a really great exercise for us to see what's needed in those times of crisis. So thank you.
And I know one of the things that Mrs. Price wanted to make sure that the other buildings and the other administrators were there and able to watch and be part of the day, because we know that they're taking that back to their buildings and they learned a lot. So if folks are wondering, well, what about my building? There were teams from other buildings that were there. They were able to witness this. And, and certainly we learned a great deal. So thank you again.
And also, we do recognize that a drill, for example, in some of the locations of our buildings would shut down essentially the middle of the city. So we don't plan to do a drill annually at every single building each year, but we do plan to use this information to modify those plans and probably do some type of modified drills and scenario-based training, but we don't plan to do an annual drill at every single building every year, because we do know that's quite a big ask, and there would definitely be some traffic patterns impacted throughout the town for that type of thing. So.
Yeah, and as Mrs. Price has shared, you think about the why, and your mind immediately goes to an active shooter type situation. But if you have an event happening nearby a school where we're not comfortable sending kids home on a bus and we need to have them handed off, then we know that this is the process that we will use. Or if you have a train derailment and there might be some, type of spill, this could be another way that we would be, utilizing this. So there's a significant number of reasons why we could be using this type of release. And it made a big difference. But I know some folks said, it'd be great to have Chick-fil-A come out and give us some pointers. And I'm no doubt that they're, supreme when it comes to, maximizing efficiencies. I think we could learn from any type of that kind of feedback. But, 28%, the custodial flag, meaning, we have to be extra careful. And if Chick-fil-A misses a sandwich and you get the wrong sandwich, you come back and you get a gift card for a free sandwich. But if we make a mistake like that with somebody's child, there isn't a gift card that comes with that. So
I was going to ask you, can you explain the custodial for non-school people, what that means? Because that is significant at 26%, that you can't just release a student to somebody.
A custodial flag basically means that we have custody paperwork on file that indicates that a certain person is the decision maker and has custody of that child. And there's varying levels of custody, but essentially it's cross-checking to make sure that student is being released to the person that has permission to have them. And so, like I said, there's a lot of cross-checking that goes into place. And I think for parents, we understand in a crisis, everyone's first instinct you want to be with your kid. We do understand that. we really work to make sure the environment, because we know it's not going to be quick, we know it's going to take a while. There may be parents an hour away at a meeting that can't get to the building right away. We know there's going to be traffic issues. There could be issues with students in another building that parents have to prioritize, so they're not going to be able to get to the building, a different building right away. We know all those things happen, but we're going to keep kids calm, occupied with their teacher, meeting their needs in the building. So they will be safe, they will be taken care of by their teachers, and all of that's accounted for and planned for. I know, and again, we're gonna make tweaks to the plan. Some of the people brought up they would have liked to have been able to message their student. Mr. Best and I talked today, in a real crisis, we probably do need to institute, okay, every 45 minutes, go ahead, reach out to your parent, something to that effect. But on the flip side, we intentionally kept kids off the network, because in a real crisis, we're going to need to keep the network open to make sure that emergency personnel can use the cell service, our staff can use cell service, and the more kids on the network on their Chromebooks, the harder that becomes. So there is some reasons behind some of those things, but we appreciate the feedback. We did get a lot of really beneficial and positive feedback, as well as really good feedback for us to reflect on. So we are making adjustments. Mr. Best is going to update their plans based on that, and we'll be continuing to work with community partners to review those updates.
Yeah. And we're just so proud of Mr. Best and Ms. Davidson and the entire HPI staff to see the teachers and all the support staff there engaged in doing this and moving kids within the building, taking them outside, doing all the things that we need to do to keep them safe and calm, as Mrs. Price mentioned. So we're just very grateful that the staff performed the way they did. It was incredible to see that. So just a lot of gratitude. And if you had reunification drills on your bingo 2023, bingo card, good for you. But I think there were one of the teachers mentioned, this isn't, tornado drills were one thing.
Right.
And, this is something else. And I told them the story when I was in elementary. I was a walker, walked to school, and in February the fire alarm went off, middle of the day, and we went outside, and you could tell the teacher just wasn't planned, and they didn't have their coats. It was cold, and then we saw smoke coming out from the other side of the building, and then we heard sirens, and our school building was on fire. So in the 1970s, that's embarrassing, but in the 1970s, they let us back into the building to get our coat, and those of us who are walkers, we walked home. Mm-hmm. No phone call, no reunification. I remember ringing the doorbell. The door was locked. My mom answered the door, luckily. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "The school's on fire." She's like, "Oh, have you eaten lunch yet?" I'm like, "No," and that was it. Today, we don't live in that world anymore, and sometimes that's not a bad thing, because one of the things Ms. Price talked about was how people look to take advantage of situations in chaos. The police had shared that with her, that you have to be vigilant even in those situations, because there's there's sharks out there that are swimming that are looking to take a bite, and so there's a lot of things that we have to keep our eyes out for. So thank you again.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, our goal is to keep, like I said, a calm environment for students inside, because we want them to want to come back to school and feel safe at school. So that's our top priority during reunification. So thank you, and like I said, stay tuned for some more finer details at a later time, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kindergarten enrollment, a few months ago, I shared we had 343 students that were in kindergarten. We're up to 363, and we're still in this year, and appointments are coming in weekly, so that continues to be a reach. And you can see where that kindergarten class lines up with some of the previous kindergarten classes. And 363 today. We'll see where that number ends at the beginning of the school year, but it's certainly, going back to 2010, one of the largest classes that we've had, and very similar to the 2021 kindergarten class with 367, which in first grade is now at 404. So, but at any rate, we're keeping tabs on that as we make decisions about staffing. The art show focused on the community, so we were very excited last week to have the art show, and you can see some of these displayed across the community. So the art show at the high school was one great event, and they've moved some of those portraits so people in the community can find them, and you can see here the location. So we're really grateful for that, such talent on display. It's always amazing. And we have a picture here representing from the school's foundation, how Prairie students receive supplemental instruction for clinicians, musical professionals who are working alongside our band directors to give that little bit of extra. So we're just really excited about this. This is made possible through the Campaign for the Arts, and that continues to be important to us. And just on that note of giving, the Perrysburg High School Yellow Oak Club is focused on giving back to the community on different topics. The Harbor Walk for Hope on May 6th at Woodlands Park. This was organized to raise awareness for mental health and providing services for teens and adults who are struggling, and our students helped make this possible. So it was a huge event, and again, Perrysburg students being leaders, recognizing what they can do to improve the conditions for their peers and also for the greater community. Finally, music education national recognition for the 17th consecutive year. We've received the Best Communities for Music. None of this would be possible without our outstanding teachers, and from May 8th to the 12th was National Teacher Appreciation Week. And we just wanted to call attention to the outstanding teachers that make this possible. And certainly the students that were here today, I'm hoping that we'll have more and more of them considering education, and that means so much to us and to our future. So that kind of concludes the monthly superintendent's report.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, between the recognitions and that report, you certainly see what our students are doing, and what this district is doing for our students is along the lines of art and music and education and success with the National Merit finalists, and even how we're taking care of their safety. So thank you.
Next, I'd like to move into another conversation regarding facility planning and discussion. And you saw this picture, and again, I want to just come back to it because I think that what we're going to talk about, the recommendations that have come forth for what do we do about growth that's happening in our community, really stems from this elbow-to-elbow conversation that's taken place from a wide variety of community residents. And I think that really is something that is special and unique to the way that we went about this process. So very proud that the board's charged us with, opening up and getting that community voice. So this is the one pager that captures exactly what the committee recommended. There's a link there that can take you into some other presentations and areas. But at any rate, this is the recommendation to solve those pressure points that we're feeling. And we're kind of in a unique place because we're expanding rapidly, and we see that, we know that. And we need more space for the students that are here and the students that are coming. And that was a major focus with this committee, getting us beyond 2040, hitting that mark. We're also in a district that is relying on aging buildings, and how do we handle those? And I thought the committee did an excellent job of answering that question. So interspersed here are recommendations that deal with new space that is needed for growth, shoring up the aging buildings so that the next generations of Perrysburg students can continue to be there, to utilize that space. Expanding those areas that are specialized, for us, and the fine and performing arts, athletic needs, special education was people were dedicated exclusively to those spaces and making sure that they're not forgotten. And then looking at some of that long-term deferred maintenance in some of our buildings. So it was a thoughtful process, brought it back to the board, The idea of perhaps going in phase 1 and phase 2 was discussed, and so we're bringing back a little more refined view of what phase 1 would look like, and sharing that with you. And if the board so chooses later on in the agenda, the board will have the ability to take action if we wanted to move forward with this phase. So let's talk a little bit about phase 1 and the update. So what we have here is a call for 800 student elementary building. You can see that is listed there for $33 million, and I'll talk just in general terms, but you see the actual dollar amounts there. Deferred maintenance, so the Toth, Woodland, Fort Meigs buildings, there's things that we need to do to bring them up. We have buildings that were built in the 1950s, 1970s, and the 1990s that are represented here, and this would make those buildings look and feel very similar to what a new building would be able to offer. That was very important to the committee. And so the elementary definitely was a pressure point where you see here that we're also looking at additions to those 3 buildings as well for $23 million. So that's expanding those 3 elementaries and bringing on a new building, keeping the footprint at 4 buildings, which we have now, which will keep the operational costs down, which was also very important to this committee in the work that they did. The second pressure point was at Perrysburg High School. We had, and it comes up in a later slide, but we had members of the OFCC in the district today. They've made our project a priority in terms of, expediting this, the ELPP program, and they had just come from the high school when I sat with them, and they said, yeah, you guys are full. So that was an interesting perspective. So we're grateful that they have, drove up here and are doing the work to make sure that our project is a priority. So that was great to see them today. We'll have a little bit more on that and as we move forward. But the high school is in that next challenging point where we need that additional classrooms, cafeteria expansion, and site work to go with it. And you see that there for $32 million. What we're doing is what the building was designed to do. The building was designed to be expanded when it was constructed and opened in 2001, and this fulfills that work. So that's where we are there. And then the junior high, the deferred maintenance, this first, and then we'll talk about phase 2 with some expansions, but you can see here that these are, in phase 1, the real significant pressure points to handle growth and the building conditions. We've been talking all along about some things that were a little bit outside the scope of the committee that were a result of growth. And for an example, that was the transportation garage. So we do have some specific numbers, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But we see that's $1.4 million to expand when we're adding buses and we're adding students and routes, where we store our buses, how we maintain them, the number of bus drivers that we hopefully have in future generations. We have to have a facility that grows with them, and this will allow us to do that. Steinecker Stadium, which is a central hub in the spring and in the fall for athletics, adding restrooms to that location, the entrance and exits for safety, and we've talked about that, giving that the ability for easier entrance and exits safely is something that is addressed here as well. And then the chillers at the high school, which is a significant, those are the original boilers, chillers in that building. And we're looking at having to replace some of those original ones. And that's, those are big ticket items for a building that size at $1.5 million. So this begins to give us those specific dollar amounts in terms of what those are based on the estimates that the collaborative put together. Phase 2 is seen here, and again, that's the junior high additions. And why is that on phase 2? We haven't really reached that pressure point in that building, but as we approach 2040, they recognize that this is an area that we need to think ahead and have that plan. Same with HPI. One of my favorite charts that we shared earlier was the number of students at an earlier presentation. was a number of musicians and athletes and performers that were in the high school in 2001 when it opened, how many today? And there's been significant numbers added. And if we use that same trajectory, how many then in 2040? So we know we need to have space designated for that kind of activity. This is something that is of specifically to the transportation and also at Steinecker. So I just wanted to spend a little bit of time here. But on the left, you see the bus garage and as it exists now, the bus barn. And you can see where they're wanting to include 12 additional parking stalls on our site and also additional parking stalls for vans. Possibly, looking for a way to expand that site to accomplish that, and then adding some square feet to where the staff is and where the staff meets. It's one of the few departments where you can't fit all the employees in a room together. So, and that's a department that needs folks that are doing some of that, bids and other types of things that take place there. So you can begin to see that, the site there and the work that we need to do to kind of accomplish that. The second slide is at Steinecker Stadium, and you can see a lot of the activity is between 75 and the stadium. There is a row of parking that would go right directly behind, so it's not that whole area of parking, but it would expand that parking for events closer to the stadium. It would also have another entry there facing the east, and then bathrooms would be attached to that. So that's one of the things that we know as we grow, have more spectators, more events, having more restroom and access is something that is important. The way that it is now, we have I-75 abutting, as a border for one side of the stadium. On the other side, we have a creek, and then we have right now primarily one main entrance, one main exit. We do have ability to open up other exits, but this was something that we really spent time working with first responders in terms of trying to create separation between home and visitors, but also creating more clearly defined exit points, and also clearly defined entry points as well, in and around the stadium. I mentioned today that the ELP program, the Expedited Local Partnership Program, OFCC was in the district today. The quote was, this was a priority project for them, and they were on site today. They're working hard with their governing board to get us approved in July. And in order to do that, in June, we may be bringing something to you for the board to approve to take that next step. So we've gotten all of our applications and everything we have in place for that. So,
Tom,
yep.
what does priority, what does that mean? Does that mean we move up faster? What exactly does that mean?
So in terms of the process to get approved, so it doesn't mean that we are moving in the overall list, but what they're saying is that the evaluation of our buildings, which is needed for the application process, we are a priority to get those things completed so that their board can get it accomplished. So right now, with the way that the application and the things that we have done, there's been some turnover with some staffing at OFCC, and because of those kinds of things and because of our advocacy, they understand that this is important to us so that it aligns with this November if the board so chooses, which then allows us to be in line and be eligible. If we don't have that, then we'll still be having to work on that during this project, and it's better to have this wrapped up, that aspect.
Yeah, and probably the biggest thing, if you go to the next slide, is that during this process, they'll be able to tell us not exactly, a good portion of what they're going to commit to, right? So going into a November election, we would be able to say the OFC reimbursement's going to be X. Now, we won't get it till our number comes up, but we'll know what the expectation is. That's the kind of the critical. We can keep moving. We just don't know what that number is until they they give it to us.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's more the front end stuff. It's not necessarily like Tom explained, moving
Right.
up in the
No,
the
yeah,
process
our
yeah.
number is just going to be, it's
Yeah.
based on valuation. They'll keep working through it. It could move very quickly if school districts do not come up with their local funds. They go, oh, you say yes or no? No, they go to the next number.
Yeah.
So it could go, it's one of those things we just don't know.
Right.
Yeah, but the nice thing is, to Mr. Juyer's point, is just that they're making a priority to give us the numbers so that we can share that with the community. They have an estimate as to when we would be reimbursed, and that's a little more of a variable there. So for an example, we're at near 30% in terms of OFCC reimbursement. So what that could look like, again, this is the maximum based on the project that we have would be 41 million. That phase 2 project, we shared with you what that could be. If the board at that point in time were to choose to roll those dollars into that project, you're really going to the voters for just 1/3 of that project. So, but those numbers will change based on the work that they're doing now in evaluating what is eligible and what isn't eligible. So,
The numbers, the 41 million will change, is that what you mean?
that could be, that's the maximum. So
Okay.
they'll look at
That's
the
the
plan and say, okay, there's an aspect that we will approve or we won't approve. And that's the part they're figuring out right now for us.
Gotcha.
So, and then board action, we have some things that are in the agenda today that the board may consider with the consent, resolution of necessity, reimbursement resolution, and those actions to begin this process and moving it forward and taking the steps to get closer to putting it on the ballot and getting our folks here in the county and to do that.
And just to point out, those 3 resolutions do not commit the district to any financial obligations. All you're doing is giving us permission to keep moving forward. And that's really critical to understand at this point.
Right.
Yeah, right. We're not committing to the financing, like you said. We're not putting anything on a ballot today.
So the bond issue, right now, based on the numbers, and again, that's something that we're working with, Randy and his team, working very closely with our county auditor. But you can begin to see a breakdown here of the home values, and so for a $100,000 home, 5.4 to 6 mils, and sorry about the throwing off there, but between $15 and $17 a month. For a $250,000 home, 5.4 to 6 mils is $39 to $43 a month, and then you can see here the 300,000, 350,000 where that range falls. So that as we get closer to this amount, you'll be able to see that number get more dialed in as we get closer.
So what will happen here, that range is based on a range of assumptions for interest rate when we sell our bonds. So, the board will end up approving the bond limit, and then assuming you pass in the resolution of necessity tonight, in fact, I'm meeting with the county auditor next Monday afternoon to work through this. He will do his calculation. He'll say, here's your rate. He'll agree on the assumptions on interest rates, and then we're set. Then you make a decision whether to proceed from there. So before you would approve the resolution to proceed, we would have the commitment from the county auditor what we expect. Now, again, and it's really important to point out that's the calculation today or next Monday. When we actually go to sell bonds, that millage could be a little bit different. Now, we can't sell any more bonds than that. And probably it only can go, so we're working on exactly where that is. So I want to be cautious here that that's a pretty wide range, but we're comfortable that we're going to be within that range. And I just need, the auditor to be on the same page as we are, because it is a team effort.
And just, I know in Perrysburg, going from 1990 to today, there's been 23 levies that have been presented to voters. 16 have passed, 7 have failed. So I think it's just a reminder that, we need to make sure that we're communicating well with the community and making them aware of the need and the ask. And all the components that come with this. What happens if we don't do anything? What happens if we do pass this? What are our options? What has been explored? I think it's going to be really important that we don't take anything for granted, that this is just automatic. This is something that we need to really work hard to communicate to our families and to our residents. And you know, we've talked about the 1950s and kind of going back to the future. And we know that in the 1950s, the community faced some significant challenges with needing new buildings and having old buildings. And you know, we're benefiting from that right here, right across the hall from those sacrifices. And you know, so we know that we're fortunate the community has recognized the need, but not always. So we need to make sure we're getting it right. And going back to the board and the original charge of, you know, let's get the community voices in as we plan this. And I think they've brought us to an important and critical moment in the history of Perrysburg. A moment that will decide what the next generations of students just, you know, are going to be able to have here by way of education. So we're grateful for that. So.
And I'll add one thing here on the levy history. The other part we have not addressed is the operational side, and I will touch on that in the 5-year forecast. And there's a reason why that's not in front of you yet, but that piece still sits in there, and we recognize that.
Okay.
So these actions that the board needs to take are going to be later in the agenda. They are not in consent. They're pulled out of consent, item 15. So when we can have more discussion on that when we get to that agenda item.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hausler, for both reports. Next on the agenda is item 7.1, the April financial report. And we've got some work to do, or not work to do, but the board has action to take on the 5-year forecast.
All right. And the story continues, right? So these are all linked together, and spend a couple minutes just kind of bring you up to date where we are on our general fund finances. I want to spend the bulk of my time talking about the 5-year forecast, at least a summary of what I've already covered with the board. We're 83% through the school year. We're at 122 cash days, which is a little better than last year at this point. The only thing really unusual, benefits look a little bit strange because last year in April we had a double posting. So I just kind of threw that range off. But where we are, we're in good shape cash balance wise, happy there. And so right now investments, interest continues to be strong. Again, we keep talking about it's a double-edged sword right now. It's great. When we go sell bonds in the spring, hopefully, we'll want it to be a little bit lower, right? So, and we'll actually talk about when we get to that point is there's actually a dilemma when you go to sell bonds and you get the bond sale proceeds. We can't make more money on the bonds than we get when we pay. So if we sell bonds for 3.5%, I can't make 4% out of them. That's not legal. So we'll have to talk about it when we get to that point. But income tax receipts were very strong, you know, for this year, and we're going to end the year better than November forecast, and I'll talk about that in the end. I'm somewhat embarrassed by that one. I'd like to be a little bit closer, but at least it's in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Our expenditures are up a little over 3% year to year, and benefits expenses over year-to-year difference I already talked about is due to insurance posting in 2022. So good shape right now, 2 months left in the year, and just holding on and make sure I didn't miss anything on the good side. So 5-year forecast, I want just a couple minutes to remind you why we do this. I don't normally spend time comparing November and May, but this time there's a significant difference between the two forecasts, so I want to show you that. And then we'll talk about some key revenue assumptions, and then I'll talk about some key expenditures, and then we'll roll. So you've got the details before, and the detailed report is attached. So let me just hit some of the high points. Just a reminder, we do this twice a year, November and May. It's required by law. But more importantly, it's a chance to have a conversation about our long-term finances. And the forecast is important because it's important for our 412 certificate. What that means is a certificate we include with our contracts that say we have the money to fulfill the contract. So like when you get in negotiations, for example, if you cannot negotiate more than what you have money for in the future. And that creates a problem sometimes when you look out 2 or 3 years. And of course, ODE and the state auditor use this to identify at-risk districts. A couple other important notes. This forecast is a snapshot as of today. And we'll talk about, there's a couple things, well, one thing major hanging out there that could completely upend the forecast. I've been conservative with the forecast, so hopefully that upending is in the positive direction. It's based on a particular set of assumptions, which I'll talk about. The assumptions to me are the most important part because that's what drives the numbers. It's not the other way around. I put assumptions in and let them drive what the results are. And as you know, state budget's on a biennium basis. That's the elephant in the room, right? We're in that negotiations right now, and we may not know what our funding is until June 30th at 11:59. The last couple of budgets go like they have. We won't know. There's a good chance for the first time I've done this that in July or August I may be coming back with a revised forecast because it'll be a material changes. And of course, this is a work in progress. So let me talk about November versus May. So this is the forecast back in November. You'll notice I had forecasted, and I got the box. Just look at the 2 years. It goes out, but there's so many numbers there, so let's just focus on these 2 years. That we were going to end this year positive at about $290,000, and the next year we'd be deficit spending about $1 million. So, good year this year, next year a little pessimistic. Well, fast forward to May, we're looking at the end of the year probably $2 million positive. I'll talk about why, and that'll bleed over next year. So we could actually have next year be a positive year again. So a nice shift, and that certainly helps us out, long term as we talk about a levy renewal. And why are these changes? The biggest thing is on the revenue side. Tax collections on the income tax side were up, $370,000 plus, and our interest revenue were up almost $650,000. So there's a little over $1 million right there on the revenue side that I did not have built in the forecast in November. And expenditure, our wages are down a little bit and benefits are down. Now, I'd like to pat ourselves on the back and say we just did a good job controlling cost, but the issue is Mr. Christie cannot seem to fill some positions. So it's kind of it's not good in that we've had to shift some things around and make things happen, but it's also we've had some salaries we've not had to pay. So I'll give Mr. Christie credit on that one, maybe. We'll see what happens.
Take
so
it when you can get it.
So let's talk about the forecast now. So again, I'm just giving you a snapshot. We'll talk about the key revenue assumptions, and we'll just kind of talk through it line by line. Lots of numbers here, but the key thing is the assumption. So generally property tax, we've beat this one to death. We're in a reappraisal year. We expect 20% valuation increase. And remember, that doesn't go across the board. It'll impact certain levies, as we talked about last month. And because we're at the 20 mil floor, we will get some benefit from that. We also forecast 1% annual growth in new construction. There's some indication construction has slowed at this point, but typically construction is typically a year behind. So we may add $15 million in new construction. We don't see that until next year's tax roll by the time they get on there. Now, but recognize $15 million is a large sum, but on over $1 billion in valuation, it doesn't have much that impact. And of course, then the other big thing is our incremental levy, and it goes up $1.5 million. Tangible personal property tax, really expected to be flat. The little bit of pipeline we have, there's still some things fighting about that, but it doesn't really shift our numbers too much. We don't expect a huge growth. In fact, we expect to see the utilities start to try to depreciate some of that, which will reduce a little bit of our income. Income tax, I forecasted 3.2% annual increases. I think that's reasonable based on what we've seen. That one is kind of put your thumb up and take a guess. I would not expect this year to be as high as it is, even in the current market conditions. But so I think this one, you could probably argue maybe a little bit conservative. Okay, this is the elephant, unrestricted state aid. We've assumed that we're going to have continued phase in the fair funding formula. We're pretty confident that that's going to happen. The governor, the House are there. We think the Senate is probably there. We're good. The issue is the base cost calculation. That's the input side. Right now, I'm forecasting we're going to stay at the base cost of 2018. The House has proposed increasing the base cost calculation to 2022 numbers. That's what we need to have happen. That will be very important to us. But the Senate, I don't know, Tom can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't think they're there. They may end up somewhere in between, which frankly, if it's 2020, doesn't help us. We need to get to 2022. So I'm being conservative here, and this is one of the reasons why, I'll show you why here in a minute, why making a proposal on an operating levy is difficult until this is passed, because the difference between 2018 and 2022 changes that calculation, and I'll show you in a minute. And we're assuming adding about 100 students a year, and this is the big assumption. Again, we'll talk about it. If the state budget, depending where it ends up, probably early fall, we'll work with Mrs. Price. We'll come to you and talk about whether or not to go to tuition-free all-day kindergarten. That's built into the forecast right now, but that's just a placeholder. We'll have to have the conversation on what it does for the district. But I think we agree if we have the space, that's our goal. And property tax allocation, that just is a function of our general property tax. I really don't do much with that. And then all other revenue, we have a little bit of falling cash balance, and interest rates, I'm expecting to fall some, so our interest earnings will decrease a little bit. And then we see a drop off in all-day kindergarten tuition in 2025 and beyond. So those are the key revenue assumptions. Okay, the base cost, here's what it means to us. So this is the forecast right now, 2018 base costs in our state formula. You see what happens, look at that's our cash balance at the end of the school year, assuming we renew the current levy at wherever it ends up. Not an increase, it's just right where it is. In 2027, we wouldn't be there because we wouldn't be in business, right? We'd have to make some major cuts prior to that. Now, that concerns me, but it doesn't concern me. My crystal ball is pretty foggy that far out, but we'd have to be keeping an eye on that, and it's pretty severe. So if we look at, this is the result of updating the base costs. Look at that swing. It really is look at 2026 and 2027. Still a little tight on cash in 2027, but we're not in complete panic mode at that point. So that's the significance of the base cost calculation. I don't know if I can make it any clearer than that. And what it means, and why does that do it for us? It makes sure every student gets funded, number one, so all our kindergarten students are funded. And number two, our per share for students goes up, right? Because it could be on current costs. Our valuations are going up. And so it keeps that gap a little bit narrower. So that's where we are, and that's one of the reasons that we're pushing really hard. Let's get the Senate on board with that. I don't know if they're there. I have not been down to Columbus to talk about it, but Mr. Hostler has, and maybe at some point in time he can pull his magic and make this happen. So any questions on that? I want to pause there at the board because it's a really important point.
Is there any logic to, Lori laughs, is there any logic as to why somebody who's creating a budget would not budget to the most current data available as in 2022? Why would they use outdated data?
Particularly during a time of historical inflation that helps to exacerbate kind of the illogical use of.
And DeWine's going around touting this huge rainy day fund that he's got. I mean, what's he waiting for? I mean, the school systems need this help. Sometimes I can actually think of the backwards logic as to why they might do something. This one, I can't. It doesn't mathematically compute to me, and that says a big thing, doesn't it?
I'd be editorializing here, and I'm just going to go out of the limit a little bit. There are some folks I don't think buy into the mission of what we do and how effective public education is. Obviously, there's a range, and that's kind of where I think it sits sometimes. I mean, we can show the numbers for Perrysburg and how effective we are, but I'm not sure folks want to hear that. They want to just assume that public education is not doing what it's supposed to be. You know, public education is designed for the good of all, not individuals, and I think that sometimes gets missed. That's my editorial comment. I'm not in anyone's head down there. I wish they would see that what we're trying to do is working and effective, and so anyway, I'll shut up on that.
Well, I think the chart that Tom showed earlier with Maumee Valley, they're up there, but we're right up there with Maumee Valley, and then the next one closest to us is Southview, and I felt the tension looking at the difference between Southview and Northview. But then to look at the rest of the schools in the area, there's no contest. It wasn't even in the race. So I truly cannot understand this. This befuddles me, and I so appreciate your efforts. I think this is something where the board and the community need to get on our senators. Any senator that you know, don't worry about your own district, especially your district, but any senator that you know, and start writing to them and saying, update your data points. We need to go to 2022.
Okay. That's a good point. I think moving on, don't beat this to death, but Tom and I can advocate, and we do with passion because we care about this community and our students and our families. But until it's painful, the board members and the community at whole, I think that's what's got to be. The community's got to, the voting public is going to have to say, this is important to us. And right now, as long as, this community's been awesome, right? We've got good support financially. We're going to have potentially another big ask, but they also got to help advocate for themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think one of the things that goes with this is there's that delicate balance between the state share and the local share in the formula. So the state, by using the 2018 or 2020 base costs, they're coming to their, think of a teeter-totter. They're coming to their, teeter-totter with old numbers. And and then locally, we're getting adjusted each year with valuations. So what ends up happening is that teeter-totter gets out of balance. And the impact is on our residents, because that, when you look at what Randy has shared here, which is a great illustration, the amount that we would have to go to our voters for is more intense, and it's a much heavier lift, and it comes a lot sooner. And so this isn't about the state dollars and the school districts across Ohio. Really, the conversation has to drill down to that, the retired person that lives across the street from one of our elementaries. And we have a retired person that lives across the street from every one of our elementaries. And the fact that by not updating, the state not coming with their, with those current numbers, is then actually saying to that retiree, you need to pay more. And that's, that's a little bit of a challenge. So you talk about these huge numbers at the state level, but you need to drill it down and say, what is the impact on that 67-year-old retiree that's a widower? And, by saying we don't have the money to update these costs means then that person is going to have to come up with that. And yeah.
On a levy strategy, this moves the conversation from a renewal to new money.
Right. So
That's a tough ask.
Well, don't even
And that's
talk
exactly
about
the
your
point. So I would hope to have at this point been say, look, we got to think about this X number and a renewal or replacement. But you can see the difference between the two. That's significant. And I think, but by July, we should know what that is, and then we'll have to talk seriously about the replacement of, and obviously we'll have to replace that levy, just a matter of where we replace it. So on the expense side, I want you to look at the bottom of this. Lots of things here. There is our expense growth, and if it doesn't kind of jar you a little bit, it does me, because to Mr. Hostler's point, I don't believe there's that much fluff in our forecast numbers. I mean, we're growing students, we're adding staff. I have, as best I can, built in a projection in here that includes a new building. There's some exceptions, there's some things I'll talk about here in a minute, but not completely. But just, most of that growth is because we're adding staff, and it's in the personnel side. So let me talk about personnel just a little bit, because that's our biggest cost, right? It's our biggest investment, actually, in our students, I think, better way to put it. Two drivers on our personnel costs, and you guys know this very well. Contractual, that's our negotiated labor agreements, and then new positions. And contractual, frankly, is bigger, but that's, we've got almost 700 employees, and when you have cost of living, it adds up pretty quickly. But on the new positions, this is where, obviously, we have some control in negotiations, but our biggest control on costs are on what new positions that we add. And we've talked about this a number of times, but I want to kind of be very clear with this. When we sit down and look at new position, and it's superintendent, myself, the assistant superintendent, and the HR director, we're taking all these requests that we get, and we're discussing it among ourselves, and okay, what positions do we have to fill for compliance reasons? Caseload for special education, it could be a curriculum requirement, like we have this year, the high school business class, and then once those are handled, then what do we have into our class size? We've got this big class, we've added these many students. What positions do we add to keep our class size down to 25? And it's a struggle. Or I think first grade is maybe 22, but trying to keep those numbers down reasonable. And if we have any room left after that, is what positions do we have out there that would have the greatest impact on students and staff? And so what I've done in the forecast, I built in numbers budgetary on this new personnel piece, and this is the number that we've worked off of. So going forward, if you saw those increases in personnel, one of the things we could do is say, we're not adding anyone. And that may, and I don't know if that's realistic based on our student growth. In fact, I know it's not realistic based on our student growth. So for this year, I've tried to summarize, and Don and his team have done a lot on this. This is what we've added. These are new positions. These are not everything. We've hired replacements and moved people around, but the first one is the high school business teacher. We're adding that because of state requirement for business class to high school. Look at the next three: intervention specialists, psychologists, occupational therapists, all based on compliance, based on caseloads. And I think our special ed director, Dr. Glesser's done a good job of showing us the numbers and being realistic about it, and working with us, and not getting necessarily everything she'd like, but making sure we have what we need to be compliant and to take care of those students. 2 elementary teachers, which are due to growth, HPI math teacher, which you could argue for growth, elementary STEM teacher, driven by growth, and then elementary assistant librarian, all by growth, to be able to offer those specials across our elementary schools. And at the high school, we've got 1,700 students plus. We had 1 nurse, if you will, health aide. We're adding support there. And then 2 monitors, and the IT tech is every student gets a device now. We've got to maintain it. So that gives you an idea of these are the ones that are new. And we've taken, within our budget, said, this is what we can afford. And then we talk about, like, the HBI math teacher and the STEM teacher happened after we get done hiring. We look like, hey, we got room within the budget. What's our next priority? So we've looked at that, and it's a combination. If you got retirement and what the new salary is going to be, looking at all those things as budget offset. So it's been, and then also we've had a couple positions that were on special assignment. We moved back in the classroom. So they're not new hires, but we've taken them, we've moved them because the student needs, we need to be student facing. And while the support for the staff is really important, generating that service to the student is our first priority. Mr. Hosser, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and this is a continuing moving target with the numbers that we have coming in, and I know that as they wrap up IEPs, for example, I know Dr. Glesser was just saying that she's concerned about needing an additional one at another building level, and I know that at the high school, for example, we have added a number of teachers over the last few years, and we brought on somebody to help out with evaluations because there isn't enough staff administrative staff to do the evaluations. So there's still continuing to be areas that we're shoring up and continuing to evaluate. With retirements that come in more than what were expected, that sometimes helps how much is available to allocate for staff. And so Randy holds a line. This is where we need to be. We can't cross that line. And for every one of these positions that are listed here, there's probably 3 more per position that folks have asked for or would like to see happen. And we really try to wade through those and make the best decisions with the staff input. So, but yeah, it continues to be a moving target for us. And the market for some of these positions are getting challenging, frankly. We have mid-career teachers that are resigning. You have a couple that you're going to be approving that are stepping away from teaching. We have administrators that are stepping away from working and serving in the district. We've heard about bus drivers continuing to be a challenge. It just becomes more and more difficult, and we're doing all that we can, and certainly appreciate Mr. Christie and the team and the buildings and department leaders who are really trying to make the most for trying to find a competitive salary, but making it an environment that they're interested in working, because that's also a big part of it. So our focus has been on that as well. So,
okay, so moving on. So we beat personnel to death. Obviously, wages and benefits are the biggest portion of our costs. The second area is purchase services. For most areas, we put inflationary numbers across there, except for special education. I'm showing a 9% increase in our special education costs as a purchase service, as paraprofessionals and other service that we go outside the district for, and that's just based on student needs and those pressures. And the rest of it really is inflationary. You'll see a lease purchase that I'm asking you to approve tonight in 2024. That's to get ahead of some things that, like the boilers and chillers at the high school, we are literally limping along on those chillers. That's a 40-week lead time. So if we waited till the bond issue, essentially it'd be another year before we deal with that. So what I'm going to ask the board to do tonight is approve a lease purchase agreement to upgrade all the lighting in the district to LED, which will pay for itself in terms of energy savings. The boilers and chillers at the high school, that if the bond issue goes through and we have the money, depending on the actual cost, the bond issue would end up covering that. And then the heating and cooling in this building needs to be addressed. The piping in many cases is shot. And we have a funding source for the Commodore building through a TIF that we have with Levis Commons, so that part is covered. So really, and so between a little bit coming out of general fund, a little bit coming out of permanent improvement to handle this lease purchase. And the other thing to note, and I've talked about this, I have built in cost allowances already for the new elementary in here and staff. Now there will need refinement because things like transportation and stuff haven't been completely defined. So the bulk of future costs are assuming that we have another elementary, all right? So if that does, when that happens, which it has to happen at some point in time, we have portables, it actually, as you saw from the numbers through the presentation, if we're adding portables out of the general fund, it actually generates, it's going to cost more in the long run. So just to wrap up, base cost funding the state, that's the key, right? And then on top of that, our enrollment growth. And obviously the next steps are a levy replacement strategy. Let's get through this, into July and August. And then we just can continue to work on our cost control where we can, and that's focus on our priorities. A couple other things real quick. I already talked about the lease purchase financing. We've already talked about the facilities. We're ahead on that. And I think we're good to go unless you need an explanation on the facilities project resolutions.
Okay.
We're good?
Any questions from the board? Okay. Thank you. And appreciate the presentation you gave to us back at the working session too, to start to warm up the thought process and the assumptions and get this board an understanding. So, yep. When you are ready.
I do have a question about the lease. Are we gonna wait until we talk about it and then on the agenda, or ask the question now?
Well, I think if Mr. Drewer is ready for a question on the, yeah, go ahead.
Or are you gonna talk about it when you?
Sure.
In 15? Okay, perfect.
Sure. We'll wait till 15 then. Okay.
Because it might be answered then.
Okay, thank you. So I'm looking for a motion, item subject 7.4, a motion to approve item 7.2 and 7.3, which is the April financials and the 5-year forecast. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second. Ms. Larimer and Mr. Pullman. Roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman.
Yes.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. Item 8, board committee reports. We will start with the May 5th Operations Committee. I believe, Mr. Pullman, you pinch hit for Ms. Larimer on that day.
Sure.
Sadly, that was
Sadly,
one I
yes, you
really
missed a
wanted
good
to
one.
go
I was
to.
there as well. You missed a good one.
I know.
Well, sure, there's a couple of things. Of course, I'm not sure how you even say that word, atamaj.
Better than I could say it.
Yeah, but what a fantastic purchase for the district and the classes that we saw how they can get on these tables and learn about the body and the bone structure and tendons and what have you, and just totally impressed with the teacher's presentation. But what the kids are doing, what they're learning in that class is just fantastic. I know Mr. Hostler was there and Mr. Bennington. Anything else that you guys want to add to that?
Oh, I mean, it's just the use of this technology. It's essentially we saw the human body, and you can dissect it into, you could remove the appendix for us as we're sitting there watching it. So it really helps to expand a mind. Helps you think about your career choices. That's what I was sitting there thinking thank God I went to become an accountant and not a doctor. But it is really, really great technology.
Well, yeah, the on-hands technology for what these students are learning, it just floors me what they've got. So again, because of the devices they have and the ability to have the technology is helping a lot. The other thing is too, they talked about transportation for next year. Again, with the bus drivers, it's an ongoing situation, but they're looking at still being delayed next year for high school busing like they are this year. That's something to keep in the back of your mind. Other than that, roofs are going to be taking place, repairing at the high school, at Toth, Frank, and the junior high school. And I think that's about it. The notes and the minutes in front of you are pretty well laid before you.
Thank you. Ms. Eubank, anything to add on the Finance Committee meeting?
No, Randy did a great job tonight.
Yes, he did. Thank you. Ray, I'm going to put the spotlight back on you for Curriculum Committee.
Sure. We spent time in curriculum on the MTSS, which all these acronyms are out there. It's the multi-tiered system of support, basically looking at K through 4 reading and the things that they will have to do by state mandates and the things that our school does do. So basically what they're trying to do is to test the kindergartners and at least 3 times a year and see where they're at in their reading capabilities. Actually, it's trying to see who slips through the cracks, or you don't want anybody to slip through the cracks, and who needs reading improvement and monitoring their progress and the plans that they'll use if someone has a problem with their reading. And one of the things that's different too is the requirements from state and the letter that goes home. Kind of a frightening thing is that some of the things that they have to say, for example, says if your child is not skilled, there could be some situation where they'll be held back. And that's something that has to be in writing this year versus before. We kind of softened the blow a little bit, and that's something that's kind of concerning. But that's what we spend a lot of time with. And again, our district's keeping up to speed on the MTSS.
All right, thank you. And there are other committees that occur, other activities that occur. I know that last week was the foundation banquet. You know, Ms. Larimer, you're our representative on there, and you got to attend some of it.
Yeah, just some of it. It is kind of like the culmination of everything that the Perrysburg School Foundation is working towards to see these students and honor them for earning the scholarships that they received, and our teachers that earn special rights and privileges and awards. And we were thinking, holy cow, Belmont's starting to get a little tight. There's getting to be a lot more people, and it's just a beautiful event. It's just, I mean, it's what we're here for, and to see it happen and work and succeed. And I'm so glad that y'all were able to go and enjoy it and see some of the things that the board gets to do for our staff and our students. That was really cool.
Right, it was awesome. It was a great day. We had started at 7:30 in the morning with National Honor Society inductions.
Yes, we did.
So, you know, hanging out with Ray and Yusu, and I know, Eric, you had the, you know, commitment. It was a long day. And then we go to Perrysburg Schools Foundation, and that was just to see and to hear the stories. And it wasn't all just, you have a 5.8 GPA. You know, just hearing why they got scholarships, and it was, and where they came from to get it. It was just a great day, and it's worth, I mean, every minute of what we do, and that's why we do what we do. And I don't know, I mean, even if I'm never, I would always go to that. I mean, it was just such a phenomenal opportunity to just meet families and meet students that, you know, might not normally get recognized either. It was a great night.
Let alone the food was pretty good that night too.
It was just a great experience.
Well, you can always bribe me with food, good or bad. That definitely works. But we'll keep it on your calendar because it'll be about the middle of May for next year as well. And just, you know, keep the radar open, and we'll try to get sooner notice for you. But just keep it in your radar that middle of May we'll be doing it again.
And so I usually miss that because usually I have a Penta meeting that falls on that same night. But this year I was like, I'm going to make both, and I'm glad I did. Made it in time for the salad even. So at the Penta meeting, kind of wrapping up the year there as well, going through their recognition ceremonies. And they're also seeing some real strength in enrollment for next year. They had their Penta showcase where 163 sophomores showed up for that, which is an excellent number. And even more exciting, they do a signing day when the students sign over to Penta, and they give away cool little hats and some other things. And there were 300 students for signing day at Penta across the member districts. Probably the other thing that they're paying attention over there at the calendar next year, seeing the eclipse coming, so also talking about how do they need to potentially adjust the schedule for the eclipse in April of 2024.
So we don't have blizzard bags, we have eclipse bags for the
eclipse
students.
bags, you think?
Instead of snow bags, there you go. Well done.
I'm sorry.
No. Let me get myself reoriented here, but I believe that is all of our committees that met during the month of May. Okay, that takes us to item 9.1, the consent agenda. The consent agenda is going to cover items 10 through 14. And I will take a motion to accept the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Ruffert and Ms. Eubank, any discussion?
Just wanted to point out there are some significant retirements and resignations of some long-term staff members, so worth noting. I know that Julie Gettert, who's a second grade teacher at Toth Elementary, is retiring, and certainly we have a number of staff members, as you see here, that are resigning. So some familiar names and folks that have been with us for some years. As we move to classified at the high school, Danny's stepping down, retiring at the end of this year, and then some additional resignations with some different monitors, and then we have 2 administrators. Kelly Johnson, who spoke earlier, is leaving for Battelle for Kids, which is a consulting organization out of Columbus that has a great reputation and serves districts not only in Ohio but well beyond. And Mr. Marconi, who is a Cleveland native and is returning home to be closer to his family, and both have served the district very, very well. So we wish him well. And
We're going to have a talk with Battelle for poaching our people.
yes. So, yep. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. You always wish we could do more recognition for those great administrators, teachers, and staff that have served
We'll
us
have
so
our
well.
folks retirement, so we'll do them all because they come in at different
good.
stages.
Okay.
So in June, we'll ask the retiring teachers and folks to come in. So we do have an event planned for all of them, or we'll give them a proper send-off. But as we go through the agenda that is actually taking place, it's always nice to call attention to those folks that wish everybody well.
Hope to see them all in June. Good. Thank you. Okay, with that, roll call on the consent agenda, please.
Dr. Reffert,
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank,
Yes.
Ms. Larimer,
Yes.
Mr. Pullman,
Yes.
Mr. Bennington.
Yes. So next item is the facilities projects non-consent agenda. We are going to, let me make sure I get this right. Mr. Drew, we are going to vote on each one individually?
I have it set up, you can do either each one individually or as a group, depending on how the
thank you.
board feels.
So it is going to be, unless I hear otherwise, the plan will be to vote for all of them in one vote. So items 15.1 through 15.6, I'm sorry, 15.5. So that means that I am looking for, and we will have discussion, assuming this goes through, a motion to accept item 15.6, which is a vote on items 15.1 through 15.5.
So moved.
Second?
Irmer and Mr. Pullman. And now discussion. Ms. Eubank, you had a question on,
Yes, about the lease purchase. In Tom's presentation, it showed that I'm trying to make sure I understand, the high school boilers were included in that? I thought it was included in this.
It is included, it's included in both places. And what, actually, item, and that's why the item, let me tell you which one it is before I. 15.5, the reimbursement resolution. This allows the district to use the bond issue to go back and reimburse ourselves for that project, if there's money to do that. So what we'll do is we'll do the lease purchase, and because it's a deferred maintenance item and we need to do it right away, if there's enough money in the bond issue to do that, we'll essentially reimburse ourselves and pay that bond off, that lease purchase off early for that portion of the project.
Okay.
So it gives us the option to do that, again, because we have, remember, all the facilities projects, those are estimates, right?
Sure.
And the buildings, the elementary and the high school are the priorities. And if it looks like we have the money, all it does is say, it's okay to reimburse the district for that particular project.
Okay.
Okay.
So my question is this lease purchase agreement, did you say it was 6%?
We don't know what the percentage will be. We won't know until we've got, you have to approve the ability for me to go do this, and then we will get bids. We're geared up to go out to like 67 lending institutions, and we'll get the interest rates back, and then we decide, if they came back at 10%, I'm going, holy cow, we're probably not doing it. right?
Okay, because that's my concern, because how do you know it's not cheaper than just doing the bond and getting, I know you want to get it going because it takes the 24 months. I
Well-
understand that whole concept of it, but I'm thinking about cost. Like, how do you know it's not less expensive just to wait than what
Well,
you're proposing here?
we don't, except that the chillers at the high school are essentially, they're worried about trying to even get through the next couple of months and into fall with the chillers that we have, and we're gonna have to. And if we don't act now on this, we'll have to go through another spring and summer with chillers that may not be functional. So that's why the timing now. The other part with the timing now is the lighting part of the project pays for itself in 3 to 5 years. So why not kind of bundle it together to get the best rates? So I think we're going to be, I hate to guess on the interest rate, but we're going to probably be about the same rate as we'll get for a bond.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, that puts my mind at rest.
Yeah,
then.
but I don't know, and I'll know I'll know hopefully by the end of the week. Once you guys say that, I'm going to say, hey, underwriter, go ahead and release the Kraken and get the bids back. Now, what?
And so what percentage is that, though? You said the bond, then?
I'm thinking somewhere around 4%.
I think it's going to be 4%.
Yeah, and I say that because Dr. Rufford made sure I didn't get dessert at the banquets the other night, so I'm still salty about that.
So the intent is to ask for it both, the 1.5 for the.
Yeah, what we're doing, again, remember, we're asking for board the ability to do this. It doesn't mean it would happen.
Okay.
Right?
I
So-
just want a clarification why I saw it twice.
Yeah,
on
that's
the-
why it's there twice.
Okay.
So we just want to be transparent about it.
Sure.
My hope is that we can do it out of the bond issue, because guess what? We can pay it back over a longer term, and then it doesn't put as much strain on the general fund or permanent improvement levies.
So to clarify, if we didn't do this, the lease, we would be at the mercy of whatever happens to the chillers and have to take it out of where? Right,
General
out of the
fund or-
general fund, okay.
Or they could, let's put it this way, if they completely shut down, that's $1.5 million.
Right,
Our
out of the
permanent
general.
improvement levy generates about 1.6. So we could replace them with our permanent improvement levy, but no roof repairs next year, no parking lots. If something else breaks, then we're taxing the general fund. So
And we've
yes.
all seen the level of deferred maintenance that we have in the normal course of business. Something would be coming out of the general fund.
Right, so then this replaces, if we get a decent interest rate, right, then it won't be in the bond piece. I mean, it's not like we're being charged twice, is what we're saying.
Oh, no.
Correct?
In fact, like I said, our
Okay.
hope is that the bond estimates that we have in there, there's room to essentially pay ourselves back for this, so we don't have that pressure on those other funds, right? Because what will happen with the bond is it'll probably be paid back over 35, 36 years. This lease purchase is 10 years. So we can stretch our payments out at the same interest rate, so it takes less pressure off. It takes pressure off our permanent improvement in our general fund.
Right, because they've been deferred for the maintenance for those, and if they don't replace, I mean,
Yeah,
We
and
put
you guys know
Band-Aids
the
on it for
problems.
how
and
long?
The other part, this building, you guys already understand the issues with this building, so.
thank you for
Well,
clarifying.
Essentially, you are asking for it twice because you're taking from the bond to pay the lease.
Okay.
Right? I want to make sure I'm understanding, because you are asking for it twice, but you're taking that money to pay it off faster or to,
Well, we don't, well, we hope that we can do it in the bond. That's why we listed it there for transparency purposes. We hope, right? And I don't know how about you, but hope doesn't necessarily pay the bills.
Hope is
so-
not a strategy.
Hope is not a strategy.
So, yeah, hope's not, so yes, in a way, Kelly, yes, it's gonna get paid for one way or the other. My preference is that it gets paid out of the bond proceeds, if we can do that. We just don't know, and we need, and there's a timeliness, that's why we're pushing this now.
Well, I'm thinking about it this way. We're proposing putting in temporary financing
Yes.
to help address the immediacy of the chillers. And then when the bond passes, presuming the bond passes, we'll put in longer-term financing to better match the life of that asset with the financing that'll be in place.
Spoken like a true CFO.
That's how I would look at it
Yes.
anyway.
Thank you for that help.
Yeah, thank
Well
you for the
done.
clarification.
Thank you. Good questions, though. I get the questions. Anything else on that? I know it's, but again, I think I want to, now that the lease purchase, be really clear, the lease purchase, you are committing the district to the lease purchase. The facility stuff, you're just committing us to go to the next step.
Right.
Well, let me back up. If we don't get financing on the lease purchase, we're going to put the brakes on it. But
But you'll tell us what the percentage is.
yes, but I'll probably, by the time I'll tell you what the percentage is, and if it's reasonable, you're authorizing me to go ahead and sign that, okay? So, then you can, if you don't like it, you can
Your evaluation's coming, right?
publicly flog me.
Open up the evaluation.
Open up the evaluation, yeah. No, I'm pretty confident Kelly will get some good rates. We're not going to commit to something that's going to hurt us in the long
Okay,
run.
that was my concern. I want to make sure it's not more expensive than
Yep.
waiting for the.
No, it's legit.
Yeah.
And by the way, we also know the boilers and chillers are going to be cheaper now than they will 2 years from now. All right.
Everything would be, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call to the question. Roll call, please.
Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Dr. Ruffert?
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
Mr. Bennington?
Yes, motion carries. Okay, our next agenda item is board discussion. Are there any new topics to bring before the board?
Just graduation on Sunday.
Graduation on Sunday, looking forward to it, yeah.
Tom, do you have any information about that for us? Like, we've
Like
always had a
parking
special
pass
parking
or-
permit or directions or things that we have to do.
I'll get you that this week, so, yeah.
Okay.
So I know they have staff, and they consider you guys to be part of the staff that park in a certain designated area that the Huntington Center makes available, so we'll do that. Yep, we'll make sure you have all that information, so.
And directions to get there, because I can never remember.
Yeah. No, it'll be exciting, so.
It will.
Okay, next agenda item is public participation. There is none. So that takes us to item 18. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dr. Ruffert,
Second?
Ms. Larimer, and roll call, please.
Dr. Ruffert?
Yes.
Ms. Larimer?
Yes.
Mrs. Eubank?
Yes.
Mr. Pullman?
Yes.
Mr. Bennington?
Yes, we are adjourned. See everyone on Sunday.